Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished and senior leader from the world of public relations from Mumbai, India, Aakanksha Gupta. Aakanksha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashutosh. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Aakanksha is the founder and chief executive officer of The Other Circle. She's a specialist in reputation strategy, CEO profiling, and crisis communications. So, Aakanksha, before we start talking about The Other Circle, a few questions for you. You began your career in copywriting and communications in 2009.
Mhm.
What early experiences most shaped your thinking about power, narrative, and influence?
I want to tell you that I didn't plan to start out in a certain way or even think about making a business, honestly, Ashutosh.
Hmm.
I think it just happened to me. And there's an inflection point when, things stop happening to you and you rein the bull by its horns. I think that's pretty much what I've done most part of my career.
Hmm.
Words have always been beautiful in my eyes.
Hmm.
Words have a beautiful way of either calming the room or inflaming the room, depending on
Correct.
how you speak them and what context they're spoken in.
Yeah.
So I believe in their power. So copywriting is something that came to me very naturally.
Hmm.
I think before I could walk, I could read. I'm one of those, and
Wonderful.
I'll read anything. I'll read the back of a bottle if you give me.
Hmm.
So I think that's what began my journey in being interested in what people say,
Yeah.
what their perception is, built by what they say. So I never meant to get into PR. I just wanted to sit in a corner and maybe write. I think that was my first wish in this world. But
Oh,
life
amazing.
just happened.
How amazing. How amazing. And while building credibility in a demanding industry, what obstacles tested your confidence the most in early years?
Uh, there's so many, but Ashutosh, I thought a lot about what I should talk to you about today.
Hmm.
And I think I want to say being young and being a female in rooms at least in this country, means your authority is automatically tested. It's not as
Correct.
so I think that was something that I felt a lot. I felt the
Hmm.
performance of confidence before actually feeling it.
Hmm.
Um, and the biggest one, which I think is true for all women, I didn't know how to say no.
Hmm.
So fun story. When I first started freelancing, I had a client that was based out of Phoenix Market City, Kurla in Mumbai. It was
Hmm.
very new at that time. It was a
Hmm.
market that nobody knew about. So I
Hmm.
have gone door to door to give out pamphlets. And my
Hmm.
client said, don't worry, print them out. And I printed them out of my own money. And I never got that back. And I
Wow.
didn't know how to say no. So, you learn boundaries as you go along. But I think that I didn't know how to say no. And I
Hmm.
think that because I was also really young and I still am, I feel, at least for the average age of my industry to be doing what
Correct.
I'm doing,
Correct.
I think that gets contested a lot.
Hmm.
I've also fallen for crutches for it. Like I've learned to wear a sari better because I feel
Hmm.
it makes me look older.
Yeah.
I have bettered my vocabulary. I've tried different things to then realize that the package is what you get. You take
Hmm.
it or you leave it. So
Absolutely.
when you put in enough body of work, I think you kind of find your tribe. You kind of find your right kind of clients. You find the right kind of people you want to work with, and then it becomes easier.
Hmm. Well said. Well said. And this not being able to say no is so common, not just in our country, but in the whole world. My latest book that's just come out is the power of saying no.
Can you please send it to me? I'm sure I could
I
learn a
will.
few things from it.
I will. But let me come back to you now.
Sure.
Let's talk about the other circle, Akanksha.
Uh-huh.
You founded the other circle in 2013 to challenge traditional PR models.
Mhm.
What gaps in the industry were most urgent for you to address? And what does PR mean in
Uh,
practice, not just in language?
Sure. I think the biggest gap I saw was that we were speaking reputation and not living it. I
Hmm.
think we had no contextual narrative around what we were actually saying versus what we are doing. To give you an example, and this is almost 10, 11 years ago,
Hmm.
advertising was still the biggest. Social media was not that prevalent.
Correct.
We would believe how big or not big a brand was depending on advertisements that you saw.
Hmm.
So it was a one-way narrative. So even when crisis happened, Ashutosh, a lot of times it was easier to mitigate it.
Hmm.
Crisis affected people as much as it affected share prices.
Hmm.
But nobody was tackling that. And I
Hmm.
think that's what really caught my fancy.
Hmm.
So I think the idea is to create human relations, which are true to the name of public relations,
Hmm.
and contextually keep deriving narrative for anything from a steel company that we work with to a pharma company to celebrities to lifestyle D2C,
Hmm.
anything under the sun.
Very interesting. And that, brings me logically to the next question.
Yes.
As you said, you worked across diverse sectors like entertainment, pharma, education, and D2C. How do you adapt narrative strategy across such different and diverse ecosystems?
So what we've done is we've created a framework. So we have a decision-making framework and a trust architecture framework.
Mhm.
You'll realize that the pillars of everything are similar.
Correct.
I think just how you use them differ. So a lot of folks within my industry are sectoral experts.
Hmm.
I think while that will continue, we need to be space experts. What works on Instagram? What works on Reddit? What works on Twitter? So I think we caught on to that early on. So with each brand, we're able to create their decision-making framework, create a trust architecture framework. So trust architecture basically means how it affects different stakeholders, whether it's
Hmm.
internal, whether it's external, forward looking, what it looks like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years for now. And then
Hmm.
we derive strat. So it could be any client under the sun, as long as your basics are right, you're good.
Okay. And you have worked with celebrity backed brands, institutions, and cultural movements.
Mhm.
What distinguishes work that truly moves public perception from work that simply gets coverage?
It's not about if you got seen, it's about whether you got believed.
Hmm.
I think that's sort of a little bit of a travel that most brands and people need to make.
Hmm.
So impact shows in three ways. Reduced friction. So where you were trying to enter earlier, did friction get reduced? Were you able to make an easier entry?
Hmm.
Changed behavior, adoption towards your product,
Hmm.
and increase trust when things are silent. So
Hmm.
when your customers fighting your fighting your
Yeah.
battle.
Yeah.
So I think that's true perception in today's day and age. We don't
Hmm.
need brand ambassadors anymore. Our clients, our customers are brand ambassadors. So
Hmm.
if they're fighting your fight, you've done a good job.
Absolutely. Very well said. Um, Cavalry Media marked a strategic expansion into entertainment PR.
Yeah.
What did this move unlock for your clients and for the other circle itself?
Uh, so I must tell you, we didn't intend to.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
work just happened,
Yeah.
and we started this by we actually had a lot of mainstream brands, something like a hyphen, which are celebrity backed,
Hmm.
and we realized that we're working very well with the product side of it,
Hmm.
but celebrities have a very different aspect to them as well. So we got introduced to it actually through very mainstream
Hmm.
mediums,
Hmm.
and we realized that what's missing is a sense of cultural fluency, if I can
Hmm.
put it that way. So, a sense of data-driven communications.
Hmm.
Earlier, right, again, when I said it was easier to have, you would you would look at Kareena Kapoor on like the large screen and you would believe what you would see. Now you're
Hmm.
looking at her on your phone and you're
Hmm.
questioning maybe her workout
Hmm.
choices.
Hmm.
So in that case, you need a very well thought out partner who's able
Correct.
to support you not only in just wide visibility, but understand fandom, understand
Hmm.
backlash,
Hmm.
understand a cultural nuance. When you
Yeah.
say something, is it out of tone? Is it in context?
Hmm.
So therefore, Cavalry Media was born.
Hmm. Amazing. You know, as you were talking, I was thinking I'm much older, and I remember, in the old days, I'm talking about the early '80s, when there was no such social media. The whole world was very different, and we were often taught that when it comes to crisis, just make sure that you release bad news on Friday, because nobody on weekend will
Yeah.
read it, and you release good news on Mondays. But
You
now
know,
it's 24/7.
it is, and if I may segue a little, I'm very passionate about it. Earlier we only had crisis of customer. You
Correct.
opened a packet, you found something bad in the packet.
Hmm.
Today we have a crisis of context.
Yeah.
when you said what you said
Hmm.
is a bigger problem, honestly, than what happened with the customer.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, most of this crisis begins internally. We don't
Hmm.
notice it. It's
Correct.
it's a quality crisis. It's a quality process that was skipped.
Hmm.
It's your customer complaining that you didn't realize. It's an employee saying something that you didn't realize.
Yeah.
So I think most crisis is very well within your control in
Yeah.
today's day and age.
Absolutely right.
It just takes a very smart, adept CEO or a comms person to take a look at it. And the issue is that we are not trained for it.
Hmm.
We don't see.
Yeah.
We view.
Well said. You also say, Akanksha, that reputation is built long before a crisis hits.
Yes.
What signals tell you a brand or a leader is vulnerable even when things look stable?
Uh, Unpopular opinion.
Hmm.
But when a leader chases popularity over credibility, we have a problem.
Hmm.
And you can see that early on. You
Right.
understand that the system understands that, and as publicists, we understand that way faster than anyone else,
Hmm.
because very often, right, your work should speak for you more than your words should. So when we see that compromise, I feel that you're in trouble. Um, Speaking very often without realizing the stakes is another problem.
Hmm.
Having campaigns all the time, whether your product speaks or whether your CEO speaks, I think that's another element. And you can see it, like you
Hmm.
know that there's going to be trouble because you've built a frequency that you probably can't keep up because of whatever market trends may change.
Hmm.
Um, and inconsistency, I feel, and
Hmm.
nothing compounds
Correct.
faster than inconsistency. Even
Hmm.
consistency can't beat inconsistency. So
Hmm.
I think you can see the red flags from before.
Absolutely right. The other thing I wanted to get your perspective was on CEO profiling,
Mhm.
which has become central to modern brand trust. What are the most common mistakes leaders make when shaping their public identity?
Just one,
Hmm.
borrowing borrowed voices.
Hmm.
In today's day and age. I think
Correct.
you trust a CEO for their opinion or their perspective.
Hmm.
You don't trust them to be likable necessarily. We've
Correct.
all fallen in love with bad boy CEOs, right?
Hmm.
Our
Hmm.
country has a few of our own. But when we borrow others' voices,
Hmm.
and that's what we do, I think that's an issue.
Correct.
In the same vein, if I had to tell you what works, if I had to tell you a CEO that gets it, I think it's one that shows up,
Hmm.
which means that whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ugly, whether it's development, a CEO that shows up will win far more in the long run than someone who's just chasing pigtails of comms.
Hmm. Amazing. You know, the first time, and I was reading about you, I was reminded when I put down this question that in the 70s, Lee Iacocca, who became the chairman of Chrysler, is probably the first known CEO who put himself out on a television commercial and said, "We build better Chrysler cars." But this is a great response you've given me. Thank you. Um, Akanksha, how should founders think differently about reputation strategy compared to large established corporations?
Wow, okay. Um, Firstly, I want to say that every issue is manageable.
Hmm.
As long as you have a framework in place. The problem, disaster hits, like
Hmm.
when denial, delay, defensiveness. Uh,
Correct.
these are three things that you don't want to get into. So I think that it's not about a big company or a small company anymore. I think it's about, like I said, crisis of context more than anything else. So it's unfortunate of for that matter, but if you're a company that's in the public eye,
Hmm.
having proof of performance or proof of strat or proof of culture is always extremely important.
Hmm.
So gone are the days when you could say, I don't speak about my philanthropy efforts, or I
Hmm.
don't speak about what my organization culture is, it just is. It's not possible anymore.
Hmm.
So you have
Hmm.
to walk the talk at all points of time.
Hmm.
And the beauty is that you can choose the platform that you want to speak on.
Correct.
You can
Correct.
also choose the audience that you want to speak to, because customers understand that they'll go on this journey with you.
Hmm.
Vendors understand they'll go on this journey with you. You rub off of each other's backs when it comes to
Hmm.
popularity. So creating your own ecosystem helps, hedge the risk.
Hmm. Well said. In high stakes crises, what matters more, speed, silence, or substance? And how do you decide? And if possible, give me an example without any names, of course.
Could you repeat the question for me
In a
once?
high stakes crisis,
Mhm.
what matters most? Speed, silence, or substance? And how do you decide what to, show first or demonstrate first?
Substance will always matter,
Okay.
no matter what no matter what.
Hmm.
Even if you even if you're misquoted,
Hmm.
right? Truth will come out at some point of time. Your reputation may take hit for a certain point of time.
Hmm.
Substance is unbeatable.
Hmm.
Second priority is speed.
Hmm.
If you're able to, like I said, keep a backup ready of your substance and
Hmm.
communicate it with speed. Very often in crisis, we say fastest finger wins. The
Hmm.
first person who speaks builds the narrative. So
Hmm.
substance and speed first, everything
Hmm.
else after.
Everything else passed. Okay. And would you have an interesting story of where substance
Oh
and
gosh,
speed
so many.
won?
Oh
Okay.
gosh, so many. To give you an example, without taking names, of course,
Absolutely,
is
please. Yes.
so we recently consulted a client who created a certain kind of product
Hmm.
and announced the fact that the product had a different make. So let's assume this is a consumable,
Hmm.
and its ingredient list had X ingredients, and then it's changed to X plus Y ingredients. A very healthy PR campaign is on, a social media campaign is on. However, quick commerce doesn't match because it's still selling old products because it needs
Correct.
to get rid of stock. Unfortunately, one of these pieces of product makes it to a very, very popular health influencer stable.
Hmm.
And they've consumed both information. They've
Hmm.
consumed the fact that this is new, and then they've consumed that this exists. So there is a large issue around, hey, you're not walking the talk on what
Hmm.
you're saying. So there were multiple ways to tackle this, Ashutosh. One was, and there's a LinkedIn post, and people are commenting on it, and it's a fairly popular brand. So what do you do,
Hmm.
right? Firstly, you decide with speed what happened.
Yeah.
So, like build substance, with that requires speed as well.
Hmm.
So you go back and understand, hey, what happened there in the first place.
Hmm.
You incentivize the partner to speak for you, which means that in this case, the QuickCom platform was quicker than the brand in question, saying, hey, we acknowledge your issue, let's have a chat.
Hmm.
Like I said, the issue was just that we'd announced a new product and an older product made it to his table. Um, so instead of doing this publicly, we got the founder to write to him,
Hmm.
got the contacts, said, hey, this is an honest issue. So, honest admission of what happened here. This is what it means. We just want to tell you what happened. Now we're
Yeah.
very happy to publicly acknowledge it.
Hmm.
What would you like? So, the minute there was honesty and substance, you went down to the bottom of the matter.
Hmm.
The gentleman just edited his post and said, thank you so much. We've understood these things happen. We
Hmm.
hope you take care of it next time.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So, easy.
Thank you. Great example. Moving on, Akanksha, what role does internal communication play during a reputational crisis, and why is it often underestimated?
Internal communication is your first line of defense.
Hmm.
So, and like I said, most of your crises actually start internally before they start externally.
Correct.
So, firstly, having a line of comms is important,
Hmm.
good or bad. Our problem with a lot of companies in our country is that we don't have a line of comms in the first place. You
Hmm.
can improve upon it day on day, year on year, but not having one is harakiri.
Hmm.
So, one is the reason you also want to have open line of comms is so that you can understand a problem before it avalanches,
Hmm.
right, into a larger issue.
Hmm.
So, internal comms is the first line of defense. Secondly, in a crisis, typically you want one person who's speaking. You
Hmm.
don't want confusion.
Yeah.
In internal comms, again, that helps in preparation, which means helping employees,
Hmm.
again, like vendors, maybe internal manifestos, to know that this is how we deal with situations and we deal with crisis.
Hmm.
And last but not the least, internal comms most often is your culture custodian.
Hmm.
So if your culture is that if there's any issue, we'll face it head on, then there's a
Hmm.
different way of tackling it.
Yeah.
So it's also it's one of your foundational pillars. Internal comms decides ultimately how you'll handle a situation
Hmm.
out,
Hmm.
like externally.
Hmm. You're basically saying go beyond the need to know that all organizations keep talking about, isn't it?
So need to know is important.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that everybody needs to know everything.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to know everything for sure.
Correct. Correct.
But I think as long as people are explained why there is need to know,
Hmm.
they get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What distinguishes a reputational issue from a reputational disaster? And where do organizations usually misjudge this line?
Issues turn into disasters.
Hmm.
firstly, and issues are manageable. Disasters are also manageable.
Correct.
But I think issues are a smaller scale problem, and
Mm,
disaster is a larger scale problem.
mm,
So I think the idea is, if you've read The Art of War by Sun Tzu, the
mm,
idea is to fight the war before it becomes one.
absolutely.
So that's basically what you're trying to do.
Mm,
How to distinguish between the two, right? Very often, the sad part is we think a disaster is an issue, right? That's
mm,
when, we basically fail. So in that case, the idea is to treat issues and disasters with the same seriousness,
mm,
create that framework, and understand what gives. It's a
mm,
trade-off. Even dealing with a crisis is a trade-off.
mm,
So you basically give it. So honestly, internally, our crisis framework gives something points.
mm.
So if you're a people-forward business like mine, people problems are 10 on 10 on priority.
Yeah.
Whereas tech may be 4 on 10 because we'll
Mm,
survive without it. So as
mm.
long as you grade it, and it's childlike.
Yeah.
If you can grade an issue
Mm,
before, you basically have one, and then you decide how you'll work with it. It's that simple. It's
mm.
not rocket science. It's just diligence.
Very true. Very true. I have time for two more questions for you. How should leaders prepare themselves personally for visibility in an era where scrutiny is constant and unforgiving?
I firstly think they need to stop taking themselves so seriously.
Mm,
I think we must understand that we're humans and we are flawed.
mm.
So I think that it's not about perfection, it's about substance that we spoke about
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
So and we find our tool. We kind of find our filter.
Mm,
So as long as we have that and we stay true to brand, we're okay.
mm,
I think that's important. Most often we don't do that branding exercise for ourselves. So I think that's important
mm,
to do a branding exercise for yourself and understand what helps staying true to brand. And secondly, like I mentioned earlier, overexposure is not a good thing.
mm,
We have so many places to speak. I think we need to choose one mouthpiece, we need to choose one space, and then go deep. So the idea is not to go wide, the idea is to go into
deep.
depth.
Amazing. And my last question for you, Akanksha. Looking ahead, what new skills will CEOs and communication leaders need to protect? Need to protect trust and AI in this AI driven and hyper transparent world.
So, firstly, I want to share with you because I feel like you'll have as much information about this than anyone else would meet, perhaps.
Mm,
Is that everybody thinks that CEOs are usually either HR or tech guys, right? Nobody thinks a marketing person will make it to a CEO chair.
mm,
I think that's going to change in the coming
mm,
decade.
mm,
A lot of our businesses are mainly comms based. Look at our billionaires. Who are
mm,
they? They're enablers, right? They're
mm,
not product owners necessarily. So the next 100 years will be built by people who enable communication,
mm,
which means that our CEOs will be ones who can communicate extremely well.
mm,
Because any kid with a laptop can code.
mm.
Everybody cannot communicate.
Correct.
So I think that the number one thing that leaders need to understand is good or bad, but communication is extremely important.
Mm,
Uh, in the same vein, AI is an enabler. AI does not propagate original thinking. So original thinking will become a lot more precious.
mm,
So if we can hold on a little tight and let the noise die down, when the dust settles, we'll emerge winning.
mm,
Also, just to bring that into context, a lot of people have spoken about the death of PR,
mm.
and tools like that. I'm sitting here laughing because I haven't made more business in the last 2 years than I've made this year in January alone.
Fascinating.
Most of it is comms driven. Most of it is CEOs who
Yeah.
basically understand that they're in trouble and
Mm,
they need some help. So, if a CEO has to upskill, comms is extremely important. Cultural context is the second piece that I'd mention. To give you an example, your podcast is global. So the way I'm speaking may seem great to you, but may not seem great to someone in South Africa.
mm,
So having that cultural nuance, cultural fluency is extremely important from a
mm.
global village perspective. So
Absolutely.
learning other people's cultures is going to be extremely important.
Mm,
And last but not the least, our planet is dying. I think if we can create products and ways that will actually help survive on this planet,
correct.
that person will win.
Absolutely. Very well. And then on those very, very powerful set of words of communication, making sure our planet survives, sustainability, Thank you, Akanksha, for talking to me about your own incredible journey. I thought we covered some fascinating ground on different aspects of communication, public relations, and personal branding. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.